Welcome to the PR Maven Podcast, a podcast all about growing your network and building your brand through traditional and digital networking techniques. I'm Nancy Marshall, the PR Maven and CEO of Marshall Communications. Stay tuned for this week's episode, and thanks for listening. Welcome to the PR Maven Podcast, episode number 230, presented by Marshall Communications, creator of the Marshall Plan 65-Step Strategic Process. For those of you new to the show, I'm Nancy Marshall, your host and CEO of Marshall Communications, and I am very excited about my guest today. She's my friend from our exercise studio, Pure Barre.
Yep.
Mads Hanna. She's founder of Curated Compass. And I want to welcome you, and I'm going to say what your bio is, Mads, and then we'll launch into our conversation.
Sounds great.
Mads Hanna has 12 years of blended work experience across PR, copywriting, storytelling, and brand strategy. She has worked with big box consumer lifestyle brands like Unilever for frozen novelties and spreads, and B2C tech companies like Intuit QuickBooks, which we use, QBO.
Yeah, that's right.
She now runs her own remote, always brand storytelling studio where she partners with founders and small business owners to help them articulate their story and share it with the masses. And I'm so excited about learning from you today, Mads.
Thank you. So excited to be here. Thank you for the offer.
Yeah, well, tell me about your career and how you got into it in the first place.
Yeah, so Madison, but I go by Mads.
Right.
It makes me feel nice and cozy. That was kind of like a new rebrand for me personally in the last few years. And I grew up with TV producer parents. So I grew up on a set. So I feel very comfortable here.
Yeah.
And I also did a lot of theater growing up. So yeah, love
I don't think I knew that you were an actress.
Oh yeah, give me a mic and I will light this place up, hopefully, with our audience here. But yeah, I grew up telling stories professionally, watching my parents do it, doing it on stage. And then, at 18, when you're told, hey, what do you want to do with your life? What's your major? You're in college now. You have to pick something. I was kind of at a loss. I mean, I knew what I liked in high school and you followed the steps and I loved art. But it was my mom that was like, would you consider PR? I was like, what's PR? What is public relations? And I was in Chicago at the time and the major was public relations and advertising. So entered that. You get kind of set on a path. You got to get your credits and learn to love it. I think telling your story to the masses through media is really, really powerful. So I dove into that. And right after college, I went into a small boutique agency and then graduated to something more mid-size and then a global agency. So it was learning really hard, really fast. And yeah, Unilever was my big client at the time. And
that is a big one.
Huge. And so the frozen novelties, I worked with all of the ice cream brands. Magnum ice cream, Popsicle, Good Humor.
Klondike Bar?
Klondike Bar. What
like
would you do for one? Yeah, so it was really exciting because we were just talking earlier about having that parent brand name and then having these sub-brands underneath it. How do you differentiate those? We're talking to different people, different ice cream lovers of all ages,
right?
All different types. And so that was really my first introduction to, how do we tell stories to people who want to buy one thing and want it to be the best thing, So it was really exciting and kind of wild. And, I was going and flying all over the country and doing pop-up popsicle stands, talking to the people, talking to media, working in conferences. How do you tell your story on a big stage? And then, media. How do you create a brand story that will not only resonate with the journalist who knows what's newsworthy, they have a pulse, they know what's relevant, and then also make sure that their audience cares. It's really important.
I'm glad you used that word relevant because it is such an important word in so many ways. I talk about staying relevant as a personal brand.
Right.
And part of staying relevant, I think, is staying up with the technology because I started in PR before we even had the internet, before we had social media. So we depended totally on telling our story through the media. And now as an agency, as you commented this morning, we do both our own storytelling through social media, but also media relations. And it's kind of two different activities. But I feel like it gives us so many different tools in our toolbox to tell our story.
Which is so exciting and then also maddening, because then where do you start, and which channels, are your people hanging out on that need to hear your story and your message and ultimately resonate enough with your brand that they're going to put their money toward it. There's so much competition. It's like the wild, wild west.
Yeah, and I also feel like if you're active on the different social media platforms, you kind of find your people on each one.
Yes.
And you almost have to approach each one differently. I think of them as different clubs. Like one is the Rotary Club, one's the Kiwanis, one's the Chamber of Commerce. And you kind of have to act differently in each one because they each have their own culture and their own ethics.
But at the same time, your personal brand DNA has to be consistent.
Right.
So it's like you're trying to stay the same, but at the same time, you're trying to be different and meet the people where they're at and do it in a concise, simple, clear-cut way. It's so challenging.
Yes, it is.
It's very challenging. And, doing PR, I really learned the value of a tough sell, At one point with Intuit QuickBooks, I was working at their QuickBooks Connect conference. And initially, year one, I was doing the small breakout sessions and teaching everyday small business owners who flew in to learn all sorts of things about, money. There's so many different facets of money, right? And then eventually, the next year, I graduated to helping to support the keynote main stage content. And so I got to work with Dr. Shaquille O'Neal and Oprah, Simone Biles, Jillian Michaels, Tony Hawk, Malcolm Gladwell. And it was my job, my old PR days, of how can I get a Simone Biles to relate to the local florist down the road?
Right.
What can she say that's relevant enough to inspire this person to keep going in their business? Because I think Intuit QuickBooks is a financial platform to manage your money and your books. It's so much more than that, right? So how do we keep people connected, inspired, and feeling like they chose the right brand to put their money in? And so part of those keynotes was telling an even bigger, more exciting, high-level story with people they admire.
Well, I love hearing this because, of course, I'm enrolled in Heroic Public Speaking right now, which is a program in New Jersey. Mm-hmm. I've been in it for 6 months now, and I'm going to be graduating next week, and then next month making my video to be a professional keynote speaker. So this is kind of my next chapter. And I will never be a Simone Biles or a Shaquille O'Neal, but there's a category they call a surprise and delight speaker, which is somebody who surprises the audience with their wisdom and their experience, and hopefully delights audiences. That's where I'm headed now. So
I love that.
I'll see that.
My first year, Oprah was the 45-minute keynote stand and deliver speaker.
Yeah.
And there's a reason that woman is as renowned and, admired as she is. I mean, she stopped every single person in that room in their seat. I mean, they were hanging on every word. And again, she's working with a brand like Intuit QuickBooks, and we saw some alignment in who she is and her story, her message, what she believes, that we wanted to associate our brand with. And it was just amazing to have her there and to also be inspired behind the curtain, being like, wow,
Well, Intuit QuickBooks must have had a pretty good budget to have all
you wouldn't even know.
Yeah, right.
I saw an invoice. No, I'm kidding.
Oh, I'd love to know.
Amazing. Fun fact, though, she flew out that night from San Jose, and guess who got to hang out in her suite? I was like, okay, great. Let's, see what's going on up here. The day's done. So that was kind of a fun
You got to hang out with Oprah?
The essence of Oprah. She had left the room by then and flew out for the night. But
I see.
Who managed her keys? Me. So I got to pop in there and leech some of that amazing speaker
aura.
Essence of who she is. Yeah,
I love that.
Yeah. So
so you started in PR, but now you're really doing more branding. How do you define the difference between the two?
Well, before we jump into the difference between the two, I'd love to talk about the bridge of how I got here and why I care. So for me, PR, I was eventually working in San Francisco and I got really burnt out quickly. I think agency life is fast moving. It's quick learning. It felt like a crash course every day and almost like a grad school program, you know, especially working with all the different food and lifestyle brands and tech. But I got burnt out and I had to really take a step back and say, why does PR not feel like a good fit for me after 5 years? Why am I not excited to plan the launches, the parties, the conferences, reach out to media? And, you know, I had to take a step back. And to do that, I decided to give myself an adult gap year, which turned into 2 years, in which I went abroad with a backpack. And this was pre-pandemic times, so remote working wasn't really all that well known or commonplace. So I was in Thailand on a beach, and I learned the term digital nomad, and I'm like, what does that mean? Can I become one of those? You know, they're making money, drinking a Mai Tai from their laptop, you know? So as I took a step back, I was like, you know, I'm not excited to go back into PR anymore, but what is it about communications and storytelling that I care about? And I didn't want to be the PR person that was handed the messaging, the announcement, to then go execute. I wanted to be on the team that got to create that story, that initial messaging, that why we are of value, why we're important, why we matter, and why people should care. I want to be a part of those conversations because I really felt like what I was getting was stale, jargon-packed. You know, at the end of the day, ice cream cone's an ice cream cone. You know what I mean? It's not newsworthy. And I was like, how can I inject some blood and life into the story that we're telling to media and to, you know, our consumers at these events that will light them up? So that's where kind of Curated Compass came from. And I decided to learn everything about branding, that being on that initial team to build the foundation of why a business exists. And so that's why my Remote Always brand storytelling studio exists today. And the difference between the two, you have to start with branding first. And then we get to pass it to the lovely people who get to share it with the world and, you know, get media talking about us and then clients glowing, you know, because they get to see their name in print. You know, branding is the essence of who you are as a brand and as a team. And it has to start there before the PR team, the marketing team, you know, sales. Even I have a little bit of a woo-woo approach. I mean, I think everyone from admin to obviously CEOs, small business owners, I think everybody needs to understand the story so they can bring it to life within their own discipline.
Because each of them is an ambassador for the brand, right?
You're almost always on, to be honest.
Yeah.
So I look at everything from an email footer. You know, how are we telling our story here? Is there a moment where we can bring the identity to life, have that surprise and delight moment so we can catch people off guard and show that they're seen and heard? So yes, like an email footer, business card, license plate.
Yeah.
I strolled up here and I was like, oh, there's the PR Maven. I know that car.
For those of you who don't know, yes, my license plate on my car says PR Maven on it.
It's wonderful branding. And we went and got coffee not too long ago. And, you know, Nancy's kindly backing out and we almost, she sees a guy and we don't hit him. And he was like, oh, here's the PR Maven. And that was a moment for you to share who you are, this tiny micro moment. Who knows where that man is now? He's safe.
Yeah, right. I didn't hit him.
We had a great laugh about it.
But maybe he went back and Googled me.
That's you.
And hopefully I showed up in a variety of places.
You made him laugh. You made him feel comfortable.
Yeah, I said, oh, I didn't ruin your day by running you over.
And he's like, well, so it's little moments like that, with that care and intention of how can you tell your story in a way that can bring people in and you don't even know it. Again, who knows what will happen with that. But it was, for me, a new relationship we're building, and I loved it. It was really nice. And now I get to see you and be excited. You know, your car. It's great.
Well, one of the things that I'm talking about in my keynote, which I'm developing, is how you never know where a relationship will go, but you have to just kind of go with it. And it's one of the great and wonderful mysteries of our lives to see how these relationships unravel, and some wither on the vine and go away, and that's okay. Right. But some, you never know. Like, you and I might go to Thailand and have Mai Tais together. Who knows?
Is that a formal invite? That's so fun. Yeah, agreed. Yeah, relationships are, you hear currency, which feels more transactional. Right. But I think, to your point, it's about value. And I think storytelling outside of a brand perspective has been at the cornerstone of every culture since the dawn of people and language. And stories are what make us feel connected to one another, to ourselves, and to our surroundings. And, at this point, it's micro moments that we're not even conscious of anymore. But, the lives that we're building, it's the story that we're telling. So what are you going to surround yourself with? What are you going to put out there? It's so important.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've seen each other at Sugarloaf also. And as you know, I was part of the Sugarloaf brand story for so many years. I still am, actually, because I consider myself a Sugarloafer. But it's brilliant, I feel, how they've created this community of raving fans who literally, well, they all drive around with the Sugarloaf sticker on their cars. And they wear, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of them have tattoos of the Sugarloaf logo, but they wear a lot of logo.
I'm sure they're out there.
Yeah, I'm sure. We should probably do a little research on that.
Hey, that'd be some great social storytelling of here's how people feel about us and identify with us. And, I was just thinking about this, just speaking of tattoos, I have a anatomical heart on, and someone's like, oh, so you wear your heart on your sleeve? And I was like, I wear my heart on my sleeve. Like, wow, I was able to put that out there. And I think the work that I do is very feelings driven, and it's a lot of heart work and hard work.
That's a good
There's
one.
A bumper sticker.
Yeah, right.
I mean, slap my own logo on it. So
yeah. So you talk about how you need to breathe storytelling into your business. What do you mean by that?
So breathing is constant. We couldn't live without it. It happens subconsciously, unconsciously. While we're asleep, we don't even notice it anymore. And so just like you having your PR Maven on your license plate, that's making sure that you're represented at all times within the world and how you move. It's, having this banner? It's a banner. It's a banner. Right behind us. You're giving people the opportunity to take in here, who you are. And this logo this is someone approachable, someone who's excited to be here. And you're making sure all of those little touch points are being heard, seen, and felt, whether you know it or not. So breathing storytelling into a business, it's really critically looking at every single detail constantly to make sure that you're well represented and what you're communicating to the world through color, emojis, grammar, copy, user experience resonates and is your best foot forward. And I think it's hard to give newer business owners the permission to be that critical and be that granular. But I think it's those brands that will outlast the ones that don't put enough intention, TLC, into the branding part of their business.
Right. I feel like that is brand equity, the storytelling, the branding. It's probably on a balance sheet, an accountant would put it under the goodwill category, which is sort of a nebulous category, but you've got it if you've got it.
Should be story category now.
Yeah, right, exactly.
I need to tell a great story. Yeah, so we got to go to Thailand so that we can go live from Southeast Asia. Storyline. No, I'm kidding. Just an idea.
I do like the food too.
Yes, who doesn't? Oh, and the prices? Amazing. Yeah, noodles for days.
So what exactly is brand storytelling?
So there are so many ways to approach brand storytelling. Are you familiar with Donald Miller?
Oh, yeah.
And brand story. There are certified brand story guides underneath his program, and it's very formulaic. And he takes a very formulaic approach of you have a hero, they have a problem, and you go through it that way. It's a journey. For me, that's very important. And most people tend to think of brand storytelling as just messaging, the words that you say. But I'm a hand talker. My little theater's coming out. Get rid of the chair.
It's okay.
And imagine you're stuck in an elevator and there's a group of people, and eventually you're like, we're not getting out of here anytime soon. So everyone takes a seat and you take a breath and you look over at the person next to you and you say, so what's your story? You get this classic question, right? And the words that come out of their mouth is not the only way in which they're sharing who they are with you and their story. It's their eye contact. It's how they lean in. It's how they smell. It's their humor. It's the cadence of how they speak. It's their intonation. It's all of these small things that make us utterly human. Have blood running through us. And I think a brand has a DNA just like a person.
Oh, yeah.
And I think it's nuanced, and it's an art, and it's a little scientific. But I feel like your brand story needs to lead with your identity, followed by your voice, the messaging, and then the audience. So for me to nail those 4 foundational pieces in a really distilled, high-level, full-of-life way gives your team the confidence to execute. And it doesn't keep you in a tiny box, because if I say that Curated Compass has a really spunky, curious, and strategic identity, and I define that, and I have a brand story map, and it shows you the feelings that people feel when I show up as a spunky person, this charismatic, lighthearted person. That's part of me telling my story. It's sharing who I am. And the biggest challenge, once you nail those 4 things and create that story, is teaching it to your team so that they can identify with it, and teaching them how to implement in admin roles, sales, marketing, the CEOs, co-founders, whatever. So storytelling to me is that simple, yet that nuanced, you know what I mean? I think as long as you root yourself down in what it means to be a human, and you show up in that way with how you create your marketing, your communications, execute PR, it keeps it really consistent and full of life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that, because when you talk about what it means to be a human, I mean, we all started as a baby in our mother's arms, and our mother gazed in our eyes lovingly and said our name. And from then on, when we hear our name, it's like it almost brings us back to the first time we heard our mother say our name with so much love and adoration.
Right. And it's so beautiful because as humans, our stories evolve. You and I have shared personally about how I landed in Maine. It's not things that I necessarily planned. And, it's me, Mads, my personal story. But so much of who I am is built into my business. And the experiences that I'm having, on Zoom and then after hours and working out in a class at 5 a.m. and striking up a conversation, it changes us in small ways, and then other times in big ways, like when I got burnt out in PR and decided I'm actually going to do branding and focus on storytelling. That's where I want to be. So I think the challenge is for everyday brands is our stories evolve. And so how do you keep up with evolving like a human as a brand? It can be a lot.
Yeah.
It's exciting, but it can feel like a lot.
Yeah.
So that's why I like to work with entrepreneurs and founders who want to dig deep and want to go there, but they feel overwhelmed.
Right. Yeah. Because I've been an entrepreneur for over 30 years, and there's a lot to think about every day.
Yeah. A lot of therapy hours, Bill. Yeah, I feel you.
Well, we're going to hear more from Mads, but now it's to remind you, if you want to get a PR Maven Things to Do Today pad, which you may be getting, it's actually a pad that you write on with a pen or a pencil.
Love it. Old school.
You go to prmaven.com/giveaway and submit your mailing information, and we're going to send it to you in the mail, like the U.S. Postal Service mail.
Amazing.
And we'll be right back after we watch this short video.
Sprague & Curtis is a locally owned real estate company. We're primarily focused in central Maine. I got excited about Nancy's book because she's so well known in the area for her marketing and branding techniques, and we're always looking to expand and learn and grow, and so a lot of us here at the office decided that we wanted to read her book and learn some new techniques.
It benefits Sprague & Curtis to have a large brand and audience because there can often be multiple years between transactions with clients, so it's important to network with them and stay in touch with them in those in-between periods. And this book really helped us learn some techniques and methods to continue to do that. We organized a small book group with Nancy's book with brokers in our office this winter to share information and remind ourselves how important it is to always be working on our network and continually reaching out to our customers.
Platforms like social media are important in expanding your business, but equally as important are handwritten notes, cards, letters. She inspired me to send her a note of appreciation, just thanking her for the book and her insight. In reading Nancy's book, I was excited to look to continue to grow our brand and our audience. I think she does a great job of motivating us.
Nancy's book really helped me learn a few things in marketing and branding and how important it is to stay on top of reaching out to clients periodically, staying top of mind, providing useful information, and really telling our story as a company.
I'm having so much fun, I can't stand it. So welcome back to the PR Maven podcast. We're talking with Mads on the PR Maven podcast now. Also available on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. So we're streaming, baby. We're streaming.
Everywhere. Wow. Is there a live audience somewhere that I can't see? Well done.
So how does storytelling affect other pieces of marketing and communications?
Oh,
everything.
It affects everything. And the beauty of a story, a brand story, once you've articulated it, put it on paper, feel it, understand it, introduce it to your team, is that it gives everybody the opportunity to be really in sync. And just because the sales team doesn't market, doesn't know branding as well, it doesn't mean that they shouldn't represent that brand story in the sales calls that they go to. A brand that I'm working with right now, they're at a huge food expo right now in California. And the lead up to how do we best represent ourselves and our brand story and the touch points with kind of a B2B audience, retailers, buyers, but the story that we built absolutely comes into play. So even right now, as that food expo is happening, we built really intentional, detailed, super fun marketing assets and sales sheets, takeaways, something that can feel kind of bland, with numbers on it, 6 count and calorie count, I think most people would feel like this isn't the moment to tell our story, but let's challenge that and let's look at what we have. The person we're giving this sales sheet to still wants to be entertained. They still want to be delighted. They're there to work, but let's have some fun with it. So, we looked at each of those assets, their footprint, how they're showing up, in order to make sure that their story is injected to every proof point. And even just a really tiny granular example also of that event and why the sales team needed the branding and marketing folks to help guide them and remind them of the story. They put a LinkedIn post out saying, hey, we're going to be there, just so you guys know, as you're building your schedule. And as opposed to swing by the booth and say hi, post, at the end, we decided to say, we're going to be the table where you can take treats home for your cat or dog that you'll be missing while you're at Expo. And it's just like, what a small, and part of this brand, part of their story, they are so founded in relationships between animals and their people. And so that was that opportunity to inject the messaging point about relationship and just a really small, could have been an easy post, one and done,
Totally. That's awesome. I want to look up this LinkedIn post. So what's the name of the company?
They're called I and Love and You, which is kind of a mouthful, but it's like the Avett Brothers song. But yeah, they're based out of Boulder, really crunchy, holistic, super fun loving, humorous pet food brand out of Colorado.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, I think trade shows are a great way to communicate your brand because obviously, well, for one thing, as a PR person, I think there's probably going to be trade media there.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So if you do something clever like that, I call that guerrilla marketing, actually. You can really get the attention of the trade media.
Yes, and even because they're going to be busy and have a tight schedule, what's a mailer, a good old-fashioned mailer? Like, what can you send in advance of that trade show in order to make them feel a certain way of, wow, I feel seen and heard. I'm going to have to go and find this brand, find these people to connect with. That was so nice. And I learned a little bit more about them. That's your story in action.
Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned a mailer because mail is less used now in the era of social media and email and everything. And I believe that you really can differentiate yourself by using the mail. Absolutely. Whether it's a handwritten note like the people from Sprague and Curtis wrote to me, or, a thank you note in the mail, or a mailer in advance of a trade show. So
it's wild. The old school ways of communication are now ways to stand out.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
I mean, isn't that how the world works a little bit with trends and reminding people that you can do it differently.
Right.
And sometimes that's the old school way, and how nice,
Yeah.
So
well, and I think that's what branding is all about, is differentiating yourself in a crowded field, especially when there's a lot of different brands that are all competing for share of mind and share of heart.
Yep. So I keep liking a brand to a person. You hit such a good point on differentiation and how your story is an excellent tool for that.
Right.
For those of us in the modern dating era who have to put ourselves out there currently, you can go on so many dates with people, and I really like my life. I love how I've set it up, and I love what I'm doing every day. And so it's going to take a certain person to really show up and capture my attention, speaking candidly, and it's so congested online, the world of online dating. There's inventory. So in order to even stand out as a person, you have to know yourself and be able to have comfort in sharing who you are. That's memorable.
Right. Well, we could have a whole other podcast about that topic.
It's our after dark
girlfriend.
Yeah.
So why is it important to be consistent in branding?
Oh, consistency. So it's the same in any human relationship. When someone kind of flips the script on you, stops showing up, you feel unsafe. You feel confused. You have to do more work to understand. And with this one short life that we have, people don't want to be doing that. So it's the same with a brand and how they show up in a very crowded market. I think there's such a trend, especially with Gen Z coming up behind us, about socially conscious purchasing, thinking about the environment. Yes, Amazon will always be there, and it's quick and lots and, a lot of production. But I do feel like specifically in the B2C realm, people are more intentional with their purchases. And so they do more research on brands. And so they want to see themselves in a brand, and they want to know that they can trust that brand. So you know how it feels to get an email that, there's filler copy at the bottom that a brand didn't catch. We're harsh. We're like, that's lazy, or that shouldn't have happened. If customer service slips up and, it makes it feel like something's your fault, or they didn't do everything in their power to help support you, that's a ding on the brand. So if you have these inconsistencies with, we have this beautiful website and this is what we're going to do for you, but then these other hundreds of touch points throughout the life cycle of working with that brand, if it's not consistent, you're going to lose the trust of the people.
Right, exactly.
And they have options.
Yeah.
So consistency is incredibly important.
They can vote with their dollars.
And I will say with storytelling, because you have so many people within a business, sharing your story, like I said, in every touch point, maybe touch points you haven't even imagined before. You know, your story gives you clarity on how to share and how to show up every day and the pieces that you own and you're delivering. So a story keeps everyone on the same page.
It also helps with word of mouth marketing, which is actually the most powerful kind of marketing, because your brand ambassadors have a story that they can tell to others who are like them, who are most likely to want to do business with that brand.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And even, you know, talking about word of mouth, reviews are an amazing place to see how well is your story sticking.
Yeah.
What are people actually saying? What's resonating with them that you already put out there? And are you seeing yourself in your audience?
Right.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah.
There's so much. There's so much. What advice do you have for PR professionals on incorporating these brand storytelling techniques into their PR programs?
So I think my biggest fear is always I work with a founder and we do the heart and hard work to create that story. And then it gets put into a G Drive folder and starts to collect dust. It's not used. It's not utilized. It was a great exercise. We're all feeling good. But your story is an everyday action, telling your brand story. So printing out that story, having reminders at your desk, your desktop, before you go into that brainstorm meeting to creatively figure out, you know, the next PR activation, brand angles, or PR angles that you're going to pitch to media, root yourself in that story. Remind yourself, just freshen it up so that you go into that space knowing we're doing the best we can to be as true as we can to who we are as a brand. And our ideas are going to be birthed from that foundation. So it's really important to just, you think you know it, but people, it tends to fall off the radar.
Yeah.
So familiarize yourself, refresh it. If people are throwing out wild ideas, say, but does this map back to the story? It's a really nice, like, Switzerland kind of way to say, if it doesn't map back to this, it's not who we are. And we shouldn't do it. So it does give direction, which can be kind of nice.
Yeah, I love
because you feel
that.
like you're floating or where to start. It's like, let's start here with our
Right.
story.
Yeah, it's literally the foundation. I love that. So is there a book, an app, or a podcast other than this one that has helped you in your career and your job and your life?
I thought about this. There's so many wonderful resources, but I recently listened to an audiobook called Cultish. I think her first name is Amanda. I can pop it in, you know, we can share it out. But I'm kind of like a murder mystery kind of person, like into deep psychological stuff. I guess you could say that's also why I'm doing this, because I care about the psychology of people. And it starts with like cult in the way that you think, like how do these things happen? And it's all about the power of words and how they can influence people. And there's a section in the book that talks about cult brands. So Soul Cycle, you know, these people where it's more than just the thing I buy, it's my identity. And it is not a book of how to take advantage of people and do that, but it talks about the power of language and what a responsibility it is as a storyteller to ensure that you're showing up fairly and giving people their own mind, but just about communication and kind of the dangers of it. So that's kind of like a really fun read for me, kind of heavy, but really important to remind myself of, you know, why storytelling is powerful.
Yeah.
And then another book is The Defining Decade by Meg Jay. I read this in my 20s, and it's about your 20s, and it's about being curious and trying lots of things. It's what led me to my shift between PR to branding. And I don't care where you are in your life, we're all lifelong learners. And if you're feeling a little stuck and unimaginative, it's a great read.
That's great. Well, we started out this conversation talking about staying relevant.
Yes.
And I think so much of staying relevant is continuing to learn.
Agreed.
I mean, I can never say, oh, I've been doing PR for 40 years, so therefore I know it all and I'm done. No, I'm learning every single day. I'm learning from you.
Yeah.
I learn from other audiobooks and podcasts and magazine articles, news. Yeah.
And something sparked you wanting to be a speaker and adding that to your repertoire of what I care about, what I want to understand and get better at, and it's important to keep an open mind.
That's right. I think it's because I get so enthusiastic about what I've done for my career, and I just want to share that joy. I want to be like Marie Kondo and spark joy. But you've sparked joy for me, Matt. So thank you. How can people get in touch with you if they want to follow up?
They can come to Pure Bar at 5:45 That's how Nancy and I met
on 4th Street in Portland, Maine.
Yes, that's where we are currently. We'll be there.
Yeah.
If not there, then LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn quite a bit. Yep, there's my name. And I love come into my DMs and let's chat. And I post tips and advice on how to give your brand a pulse, mostly through the power of language and copywriting. But every now and then I'll talk design and, have a friend come on and she can talk about design, storytelling, and everything like that. So find me on LinkedIn and visit my website. There's a form there as well if you want to talk brand storytelling and taking your brand to the next level. Yeah.
So curatedcompass.com for those who aren't listening to our live stream today or watching.
That's me. Yeah.
Well, Matt, this has been just so great. And I think we're going to have you back because I think there's so much we could talk about.
Thailand version.
Yeah, right.
I'm really looking forward to it. We'll do a follow-up.
And also online dating sites.
Yes, boy, do I have some advice for you. Oh, man.
That would probably be the most popular episode I've ever had.
It's all about those views. But does it map back to your story? That's what we have to ask. Is that part of your brand story? We'll figure that out offline.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Matt, and thank you to everybody in PR Maven Nation for joining us. And the other thing is, I noticed we have matching. I mean, it's almost like the same color, which is really cool.
I knew where I was coming today. I knew the brand, and I wanted to show alignment and support.
So have a great day, PR Maven Nation. Thanks for listening to this episode of the PR Maven podcast. I invite you to share a review of the podcast on iTunes or your favorite podcast player. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you never miss an episode. You can also join the PR Maven Nation on Facebook. It's free to join, and it's a great community of like-minded individuals who are all looking to learn and grow from one another. If you use an Alexa device, use your Alexa app to search the Skills and Games section to find and enable the PR Maven Podcast Flash Briefing. This will give you access to exclusive content and more PR and marketing advice. Thanks again for listening, and have a great rest of your week, PR Maven Nation.